Hey everybody, how are you? Good afternoon. I'm Harry Kargman. I'm the founder and CEO of Kargo. I have Linda Bethea, a friend, an amazing marketer, somebody who's actually worked at so many of the CPG brands that you know and love, to talk about sort of work-life balance and how to sort of create the best between your work and between your home life. And I think that's so important as we go into a recovery from COVID and back to potentially pulling people back to the office, but at the same time having the habits and experiences of being at home with your kids and your family during COVID and trying to sort of balance those two things out. So, let's just talk about you and sort of your bio. Tell us a little bit about sort of where you came from and sort of the environments. I think you shared with me what that was like working in those organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. So I had kind of a strange journey to my role as head of marketing at Danone. I grew up in a very blue-collar household outside of Boston, Massachusetts. I knew nothing about marketing, advertising, business. If you'd asked my 10-year-old self where I would be in any number of years, I never would have imagined I'd be sitting on a stage with you talking about this. But went to college and took a class on advertising and just fell in love with it. And so ended up going to get my MBA at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern. And from there, got a job at Frito-Lay in Dallas, Texas. Had never been to Dallas before, but loved Frito's products, and it seemed like a great opportunity. So started my career there and worked in a number of brand roles. And about 5 years in, I realized that if I truly wanted to be a great marketer and leader, I needed to understand other parts of the business. So I actually raised my hand and asked for a rotation into field sales. So they moved me up to New Jersey, and I took a role in field sales. I had a 1-year-old at the time, and I traveled 130 days that year. Any of you parents in the audience can imagine what that year was like. It was absolute hell. But I learned a ton, and then I was able to move over to the beverage side of the business and continue my career at PepsiCo, working across different beverage brands. But I reached a point about 10 years in that I knew I either had to be a PepsiCo lifer or I needed to go get experience elsewhere. So from there, I moved to what I call the fun side of beverages and took a role at Diageo, managing their rum portfolio. Spent about 3 years there building a team and trying to turn around that business. It was a lot of fun. But again, I reached kind of a point in my career where it was like, am I really doing good? I've been working on salty snacks. I've worked on carbonated soft drinks. Now I'm working on alcohol. Am I really leaving a good legacy? Am I living up to my purpose? And so I ended up taking a job at Danone, which is one of the largest B Corps in the world, which means we use business as a force for good and live purpose every day. And so it's been, a great landing spot for me, both in terms of what I want to do going forward, but also the environment I'm in. Both Pepsi and Diageo are very much male-dominated environments. You're dealing with the bottling organization at PepsiCo, you're dealing with the distributors at Diageo, and it is a daily battle as a woman. So I'm very happy to be in an environment where I don't have to deal with that every day anymore.
Share with us, you shared with me some of the stories of like walking into the room back in the older days at Frito-Lay and Pepsi. I don't think it's probably the same today, but sort of you've had to navigate that, I guess, since the beginning of your career. Walk me through sort of those expectations, especially since you're a parent and you had a young child at that time, and you told me about the challenges of even being a single mom. Walk me through sort of the juxtaposition between the expectations and sort of what your experiences were and how you had to navigate.
Yeah, there were some difficult moments. As sometimes I was the only woman in the room, and sometimes I was actually the most senior person in the room, but because I was the only woman, there were times where the male client, customer, bottler, distributor wouldn't speak to me, would direct all the questions to the members of my team who were male. And finally, I was like, hey, I'm actually the decision maker here. So if you want me to say yes, you probably should look me in the eye and talk to me. But it took me a few years to get to that point. I think as women, we never want to rock the boat, right? We want to get along to go along, or whatever that phrase is. And so a lot of times I would just smile and nod and try to get through the meeting. And I never felt good about that. I never felt like I was being my authentic self. And I finally realized after I had my daughter that my purpose is to be a great role model for her and for other women. And so if I'm not going to speak up in those situations, who will? And I do it in a nice way, but somebody's got to call people on their bullshit, and it still exists. I hope it's not as bad as it used to be, but I was called every name in the book: honey, sweetie, go home to the kitchen kind of stuff. I mean, all the stereotypical stuff you expect, and then some. There was a bottler that we worked with on the Pepsi side who made it his mission every year to make at least one marketer cry, and one female marketer at that. And so that was the environment that I was working in and day out. And hopefully it has changed because I was willing to speak up, and hopefully other people are as well.
Walk me through, you sort of shared a couple ideas and tidbits of what your life was before COVID, how it shifted during COVID, and now coming out of COVID, how it sort of evolved from what it was before COVID. It's different. You sort of shared, what your life was like then, what your life evolved to be, and now what your life, the hybrid life that you actually exist now. Maybe you can walk sort of the group through sort of that.
Yeah, for me, COVID was actually a huge blessing. Before COVID, I'm a single mom, and I was struggling to get it all done. I was constantly running from work to school pickup to, all of these different things, and never felt like I was doing a good job. I felt like I wasn't doing a good job at work. I felt like I wasn't doing a good job at home. And then COVID forced us to take this huge pause, right? All of a sudden I was home every day, all day with my 12-year-old. That was challenging, but it also brought us closer together. And it also brought me closer to my team. I think all of us during COVID, working from home, got an opportunity to see another side of people, right? We all of a sudden were seeing where people lived, right? You got to see what their bedroom looked like or their home office. You met their kids, you met their pets. And so I think it really opened up the human side of what we do every day and how we connect with people. And I think it helped people have more honest conversations about what they were struggling with during COVID and what mattered to them. And I truly believe that you should be open and honest and vulnerable. I think some people think vulnerability is a weakness. I think it's a superpower. I bring my whole self to work every day, and I tell people on my team when I'm struggling with something personally, because I think it helps them understand me more as a leader, and I hope they do the same. I hope they feel like it's a safe space for them to open up about, I have a woman on my team now dealing with some elder care challenges, and that's taking up a lot of her emotional headspace. But me understanding that helps me help her. As a single mom, I have a lot of challenges, and I'm very open about that. I now bring my daughter to the office. Everybody got to meet her on Zoom during COVID, so they had a little bit of a window into what she was like, but now I have the flexibility to do even more of that. Since we've gone back to work, I've really tried to do more work-life integration. And so keeping what we started during COVID now in the return to the office in real life. So the weeks I have her, I have a custody schedule, 1 week on, 1 week off. The weeks I have her, I leave the office at 3:00, I pick her up at school, and I bring her back to the office with me. She sits there and does her homework while I finish my meetings, and it's absolutely wonderful. And I never would have done that before COVID, but I feel like now it's okay, and it's okay to show people that we're managing all of this other stuff outside of work.
You actually had one funny story about bringing her to the office and how she's actually contributing to your work experience. Why don't you share that?
Yeah, so obviously when we were home during COVID, she wasn't going to school. So she got to sit and listen in on a lot of my meetings and really learn about what I do every day, the good, the bad, the ugly. But she loves the, marketing, the creative side of marketing. She's a very creative person. And so one day she was in the office with me a couple months ago, and we were having a meeting on International Delight, our largest coffee creamer brand, and talking about how do we start recruiting a younger generation to International Delight. And she's like, well, duh, Mom, are you on TikTok? I was like, actually, we're not on TikTok with International Delight. So she stood up, got a marker, and basically wrote a TikTok strategy on the whiteboard in the room and was so proud of herself. And she was like, hey, can I present this to your boss? I was like, okay, well, let's see if we can make that happen. And again, because I'm very open with my boss about my situation, I said, hey, Finley wants to present a strategy to you on International Delight. Can she do that? And he said, absolutely. So she put together a few PowerPoint slides and pitched him her strategy.
Which made her a valuable asset to the team. I hope she's making minimum wage. So, with that sort of change, how do you see us coming out of COVID? I think, many brands and many of the folks in ad tech and the people in the industry at large are struggling with sort of that return to office. What should it be? What does it look like? Is it 1 day a week? Is it 3 days a week? Is it, if you're in real estate, it's 5 days a week? They're like, let's just pretend COVID didn't happen. Where are you in terms of sort of thinking about that? And then how are there sort of different expectations? So for example, if you're back in the office, bringing, your dog, bringing your daughter, bringing your other requirements to it, or changing your schedule to accommodate pickup, et cetera. Walk us through sort of like what you think those best practices look like, and sort of where you are, I guess, in your migration as you think about, the current experience today.
Yeah, I think it's all about open and honest communication. Be upfront about your situation, because every situation is different. What works for me isn't going to work for you or you or you. And so really get to know your team and understand individually what each person needs to be successful. That's my job as a leader, to set my team up for success. And so in order to do that well, I need to understand what they need from me. And I think, most people are afraid to ask for help. I think women probably even more so. But we went through this great exercise at a team offsite a few weeks ago where the facilitator said, why don't you ask for help? And people threw out different answers. I'm afraid to ask for help. I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to look weak. I don't want to be vulnerable. And then the facilitator flipped the switch and said, but how do you feel when somebody asks you for help? I feel proud. I feel needed. I feel valued. So why wouldn't you want to make somebody feel that way? Ask for help, and you're actually helping somebody else. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to raise our hands and ask for the help we need. When I took this job 3 years ago, I said to my now boss, the CEO, here's what I need to be successful in this job. I'm a single mom, and I need that flexibility. The weeks that she is with me, she is my priority, and I will leave the office at 3 o'clock. I will bring her to work with me. There will be team offsites I can't attend because I have her, and you need to be okay with that. But also know the weeks that she's not with me, I'll give you 200%. And so that's what I think we need to do as leaders and as employees, is ask for help and ask your team what they need to be successful.
Yeah, and actually, you brought up a good point, which is you sort of set that tone coming into the job. You were an advocate for what your needs are. Walk us through a little bit about, how do you think about when that tone needs to be set, and sort of advocacy. You had a sort of a strong opinion about that in general, especially.
I have a strong opinion on everything.
Yeah, clearly. But you said specifically that women versus men, there is a gap between a feeling of confidence about sort of advocating on your own behalf. And I think you were going to talk about, how you would expect and what you would expect of people moving forward, given sort of the need and movement to equality in the workplace, and really the mandate, I think, today for most organizations to sort of create those opportunities, especially coming out of COVID, that allows for the kind of balance necessary to properly navigate both work and home life.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think we still have a ways to go, but I think people do need to advocate for what they need. They need to advocate for what their teams need, and they need to stop thinking about it as a women's issue, right? Anyone that's a parent, male or female, needs to normalize picking their kid up from school or going to their kid's soccer game. And if you don't have kids or a partner, you have other things going on in your life that are important and that matter. And that should matter too to your employees. And so another great example, we had a senior leadership offsite that was scheduled last month in Vail, Colorado. So great place to travel to, but a pain in the ass to get there because there are no direct flights. And so they asked everybody to fly in on a Sunday. And I called the head of HR and I said, you think that Danone is an inclusive company. You talk publicly about how we value employees and we have great benefits. We give 26 weeks of parental leave, et cetera, but you're asking people to give up their Sunday to travel for a work event. I don't think that's okay. And he said, I'd never thought about it that way. I said, I have my daughter that weekend. I'm not flying in on Sunday. And I want you to make it okay for other people to say no, whether they have plans with friends or something else that they're doing. We shouldn't normalize working 24/7 and working on weekends. And it has to be okay to say no.
And that makes sense. And what was the outcome from that conversation? Were you able to get that normalization?
It was very positive. I flew in on Monday. It worked.
You had shared sort of some of the conversation around flexibility, money, the size of your team, travel, et cetera. What are those things that you think need more equalization of expectations that you think are sort of missing?
It's interesting. I was reading an article this morning that talked about how women bear the burden of what they call the mental load. So think about as parents, right? Women tend to be the ones that are signing their kids up for activities, buying the birthday present for the birthday party. But that's also true at work. Women more often than not are asked to be the note takers in meetings. They're the ones planning the offsites, right? So we need men to step up and share that burden, right? It shouldn't be women in those roles doing those things.
It makes sense. And are you seeing that, do you as a manager then purposely delegate those things, think about that purposefully going forward? Or do you think that is something that just, it's not on people's radar and it's something that we need to put on people's radar?
Yeah, I don't think it's a conscious thing, right? I think it's, unconscious bias that still exists in the world today. And it's, I think, something I'm very aware of because of where I sit and what I believe, but also as a mom of a daughter. I want to make sure that the world she's growing up in, is more equal and equitable for her as she goes through life.
You also talked about, being sort of in a leadership role, advocating for yourself, even beyond the boundaries of the organization. You even talked about LinkedIn and a few other things in terms of sort of creating reputation and a sense of sort of accomplishment slash expertise by being sort of an advocate for yourself in that. Can you walk us through a little bit about how you've thinking about using LinkedIn and other places to sort of create that aura of professionalism and capability that you think, there is a disparity between how men, I guess, use that and how women use that, and where you would sort of expect that to be more equal, and if not, more of an advocate for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's stereotypical, but I think women are less likely to promote themselves. And LinkedIn's a great platform to be able to do that in a way that doesn't always feel self-serving. I mean, sometimes it is. Brand Innovators does a great job sending me beautiful promotional materials to post on LinkedIn whenever I speak here, and I use them. But I think it's also a platform where you can go beyond that, and you can be more authentic and more personal, and build your personal brand in addition to your professional brand. And so I've started to do that more over the past year or so. And I've had some really good conversations on LinkedIn with people. I did a post a few weeks ago where I had just come out of a media interview, and the interviewer mentioned that more and more people in my position are hiring people to write their LinkedIn content. And that just blew me away, because I believe in authenticity, and I couldn't imagine as a marketer having somebody write my LinkedIn content, paying somebody to write my words. But it sparked a really good debate where people had different points of view on that and said, how is that any different than you briefing an agency to develop your content for your consumers? And it just led to a really good, authentic dialogue with different points of view. But again, it's a great way to promote what you believe and what you stand for and build that personal and professional brand.
Do you have any tips in terms of using LinkedIn, at least for yourself, or just tips of the trade that you want to sort of share that you think the audience might benefit from?
I think, yeah, be personal, right? Everybody's on LinkedIn. I assume you're all on LinkedIn, and you see the same content over and over again, right? Come hear me speak at Brand Innovators. Come hear me speak at Adweek. But what's really going to stand out and break through the clutter is something that is more personal and more authentic. It's what we do as marketers every day, trying to reach consumers and break through the clutter. And so I think the same principle applies there as well.
Is there anybody out there that you think does that really well that people should model off of?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know if anybody's doing a great job. And again, I think a lot of people do have ghostwriters, and you can tell. There are people that are prolific posters. And I mean, I know I don't have enough hours in the day to be posting that often. So it's a challenge.
It is a challenge. Well, I want to open it up to questions. Do you have anything that you want to, did I miss anything? I know I had some notes from our session, but I want to make sure that I captured everything that we had talked about. Is there anything that I missed? And then I'll open it up to questions.
I mean, I would love to answer questions. I say one question that I do get often is, if there was one piece of advice that you could give women as they advance in their career, what would it be? And my advice is to always negotiate. Again, I think because women don't like to ask for what they need, they don't ask for what they deserve. Know your worth and ask for it. The worst someone can do is say no, and that's not the end of the world. So ask for the raise, ask for the promotion, ask for the flexibility you need, know your worth, and go after it.
That's great. Any questions in the audience? Anybody over there having coffee? All the way in the back. No. Any questions? Really? Go ahead, Anne. I can repeat it. I'll if she asks.
So as you're leading a marketing organization, what are the top things that you're trying to instill in your team that you think are really important that might be missed nowadays?
So just so people can hear, as the leader of a marketing organization, what are the best traits or ideals or things that you try to instill in your team, as the leader of that organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I always tell them that I'm looking for the 3 C's: curiosity, courage, and compassion. I think as a marketer, you have to be innately curious about your consumer, about what trends are happening in the world. Always be learning, always be asking questions, have that curiosity. And then have courage. It's not easy to be a marketer in today's world. There's a lot of pressure on us to drive growth in our organizations, right? Average tenure of a CMO is 18 months. But you have to have courage and take risks, because that's when you'll truly unlock the magic, drive growth, and make a difference. And then finally, compassion. I think, again, leading with empathy, having compassion for your consumers, for your team, is going to make you a better marketer and a better leader.
The 3 C's. Go ahead.
How can men do a better job?
Excellent question, and one that doesn't get asked enough. And again, I think, this is about women in marketing leadership, but to me, it's about how to be a leader, right? Whether you're a man or a woman, it's going to take all of us to change the conversation and make it more equitable. So be more aware. Look for those type of microaggressions that happen where men and women may be treated differently in meetings or in certain situations, and be an advocate. Step up and, if you see something, say something. You can be the change too.
That's great. Anybody else? Come on, you got to have questions. Nothing, you're, no questions around? Kevin?
Camera. Thanks. Something in the last 10 years you've extremely proud about, and something coming up, even though you might not be able to tell us as much, that you're really excited about?
Ooh, personally or professionally? Ooh, that's a good one. I would say personally, I'm most proud of the daughter I'm raising. It's been a challenging ride. Her dad and I got divorced when she was 5. It has not been easy. I actually took a 6-month sabbatical when I got divorced to help her through that transition, and it was the best 6 months of my life. You'll never get that time back. And I hope that today I am a good role model for her in terms of, being a working woman, but also a good person and instilling the right values in her. I also hope that I'm showing her that you can love your job. I truly love what I do, and I hope one day she finds a career that she loves as much as I do. And, I'm inspired to get out of bed every day and go be a marketer. And, in terms of what's coming up, we have so many cool projects in the work at Danone. I joined 3 years ago and have really focused the past few years on building the right team. We now have the dream team in place, and we are ready to unleash some really cool stuff across our brands going forward. So be on the lookout.
It's great. Anybody else? One more, go ahead. Hold on one quick sec for the mic.
For the camera.
Oh, no worries. You've spoken a lot about authenticity, which I think is amazing, but clearly that's maybe something that you have learned in your career as well. So I'm curious, as a woman, how you have what you would maybe say to your younger self when you encounter someone who doesn't appreciate the authenticity that you bring to the conversation.
That's a really great question, because I wasn't always authentic, right? I mean, I talked earlier about, early meetings with bottlers or distributors, and I also think I wasn't as open and honest about my personal situation and things I was going through as a woman, as a wife, as a divorcee, as a mother, and I think I would look back and tell my younger self, be brave, open up to people more, because the rewards are immense. I think when you're open and honest and transparent and vulnerable, you get it back in spades. And so I wish I had learned that earlier on in my life.
Feels counterintuitive, right? The more vulnerable you are and the more open you are, you would think that it leaves you, people will judge you, leaves room for attack, but oftentimes it, solicits and elicits a totally different response than expected.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear, and I think people do worry about being judged or how they'll be perceived. And at the end of the day, I am who I am, and there are going to be a lot of people that don't like that, and I'm at a place where I'm okay with that. I'm happy with who I am, so it is what it is.
It's great. Last question, if there is one. Pin drop silence. It's like Bueller. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you so much for sharing so many insights, and look forward to doing this again with you. And please follow Linda on LinkedIn. She posts
My own
lots of
personal
amazing
hype
things.
man. I love it.
And well, there's lots of learnings there as well. So